The janitor whispers, "There's a camera in your office." Millionaire exposes spy fiancé. Part 1. A whisper in the night. The glass tower of Thorntech rose high in the heart of the city, reflecting neon lights from towering billboards. On the 50th floor, Damien Thorne, 35, stood at his office window, gazing down at the stream of traffic, glowing like streaks of moving light. As the CEO of Thorntech, the world's leading cybersecurity company, known for its unbreakable encryption technology, Damien was preparing to announce a multi-million-dollar government contract that would launch his company onto the international stage. His tailored gray suit hugged his tall frame, and his chiseled face remained stoic, cold, with deep blue eyes that carried a quiet, unfathomable loneliness. Success had brought him to the top, but few knew that Damien carried scars from 10 years ago when his parents died in a car accident. He had built Thorntech from the ashes of that pain, but even now he sometimes wondered whether he was running from something or toward it. In the press room, the air buzzed with energy. Journalists from all over had gathered, cameras flashing and lights flickering like a concert of strobe lights. Damien stood before the mirror in the green room, checking his appearance. He didn't care for these events, too many eyes, too many questions, but it was part of the game, and Damien always played to win. A small hand touched his shoulder, pulling him from his thoughts. Elena Voss, his fiancée, smiled at him through the mirror's reflection. "Your tie's crooked," she said, her voice soft as autumn wind. Her fingers adjusted the navy silk tie with gentle precision, brushing against his chest. "Better?" she asked, her eyes twinkling like a sky full of stars. Damien rarely smiled, but in that moment, the corner of his lips curved. "You always make things better, Elena," he said, placing his hand over hers, feeling the warmth of her delicate fingers. Elena Voss, 29, was the picture of perfection. Soft brown waves framed her shoulders, intelligent brown eyes sparkled with wit, and her smile could melt anyone. She held an MBA from a prestigious school and had worked for a major financial firm before meeting Damien at a tech conference. From then on, they became the media's ideal couple, the cold tech millionaire and the woman who melted his heart. In just 3 weeks, their formal engagement would take place, and the world seemed ready for a fairy tale ending. The press conference began. Damien stepped up to the podium, his deep, steady voice outlining Thorntech's new encryption system, a defense so advanced it promised to guard data against all cyber threats. Reporters listened intently. Some took notes while others raised their hands with questions. "How can Thorntech guarantee this system is truly unhackable?" one reporter asked. Damien offered a slight, confident smile. "If I reveal that secret, I wouldn't be Damien Thorne," he replied, prompting laughter from the crowd. In the front row, Elena applauded warmly, her gaze fixed on him. She wore an elegant red silk dress, striking, but not flashy, like she was born to stand by his side. After the conference, a crowd swarmed Damien to offer congratulations. He weaved through them, searching for Elena. She stood in a corner, holding a glass of wine, smiling as he approached. "You did better than great, Damien Thorne," she teased. "Just don't let it go to your head." Damien laughed, a rare sound. "Arrogant? You're the only one who dare call me that." Elena tilted her head and handed him a small gift wrapped in craft paper. "This is for you," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. Damien unwrapped it to find an old leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed with age, as though each one held a story. "I found it at a flea market this morning," she explained. "It made me think of you, simple but deep, like the way you hide your heart." Damien flipped through the book, his fingers brushing faded ink. For a moment, it felt like Elena had touched the most hidden part of him, the part he never let anyone see. They left the tower together, hand in hand, flashbulbs trailing them. Damien's car waited, but he paused, pulling Elena into a shadowed corner of the building. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being here, for everything." Elena smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You don't have to thank me, Damien. I just want you to be happy." In that moment, under the city's soft glow, Damien believed he had found the missing piece of his life. It was close to midnight when Damien returned to the Thorntech headquarters. He had forgotten a USB drive containing crucial documents for an investor meeting the next morning. The tower was now quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint glow of hallway lights. Damien stepped into the elevator, his eyes tired but still sharp. He hated coming back at this hour. The vast, empty space of the 50th floor always made him feel more alone. This tower was his triumph, but it also served as a constant reminder that he had no one. When the elevator doors opened, Damien heard the soft sound of a broom sweeping across the marble floor. Mr. Jonas, the longtime gatekeeper of the tower, was at work. In his 60s, Jonas was a thin man with snow-white hair and deep brown eyes that seemed to observe everything with an uncanny sharpness. Damien had heard whispers among employees that Jonas was a mystery. He had worked in the building even before Damien acquired it. Yet almost nothing was known about him except that he was always punctual and never complained. Damien gave his usual nod of acknowledgement, but Jonas suddenly stopped, broom held upright. "Mr. Damien," he said, his voice low and raspy, almost a whisper. Damien turned, slightly surprised. Jonas rarely said more than a few words. "What is it, Mr. Jonas?" Damien asked, walking over. Jonas glanced around as if afraid someone might overhear, then motioned for Damien to follow him to a dim corner near the emergency stairwell. "There's a camera in your office," he said in a hushed tone. So quiet, Damien had to lean in to catch the words. "Not one installed by the company." A chill ran down Damien's spine. "A camera? Are you sure?" he asked, unable to hide the suspicion in his voice. Jonas nodded, his eyes locked on Damien. "I used to be a security engineer before I took this job," he said, his voice tinged with a distant sadness, like the past still lingered as an open wound. "I used to design security systems for major firms. I know what the gear looks like. Last week, I saw a strange figure lurking near your office late at night. Yesterday, I checked again and I found it. A micro camera hidden behind the bookshelf. Very sophisticated. Not something an amateur could pull off." Damien frowned, his heart pounding faster. Thorntech was a cybersecurity firm protected by cutting-edge systems that he personally oversaw. A hidden camera in his office? That was nearly impossible unless it came from an insider, or someone very close to him. "Why didn't you report this to security?" Damien asked, his voice icy, though a storm of doubt swirled inside him. Jonas shrugged, his eyes seeming to look straight through Damien. "I don't trust anyone here, except you, and I don't like secrets. You should check it out." Damien opened his mouth to ask more, but Jonas turned back to his broom as if the conversation had never happened. "Sleep well, sir," he said calmly, then disappeared down the dim corridor, his frail figure fading into the shadows. Damien stood alone, feeling as though the floor beneath him had just shifted. A camera in his office. Who put it there? A competitor? A traitorous employee? Or number? He shook his head, pushing away the thought of Elena. She couldn't be involved. She was the one person he trusted, the only one who had broken through the walls around his heart. He stepped into his office, eyes scanning the oak bookshelf Jonas had mentioned. He didn't touch it, not wanting to reveal that he knew. Instead, he retrieved the USB drive from a drawer, locked the door, and left. But as he sat in his car, Jonas's whisper echoed in his mind. The image of Elena adjusting his tie, her radiant smile, the old leather notebook all replayed in his memory, now veiled in the faintest shadow of doubt. Damien gripped the steering wheel, his eyes darkening. He knew he wouldn't sleep tonight. You're watching Soul Stories, where every tale whispers of love, healing, and hope. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, and that love often arrives when we least expect it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of our journey. Now stay with us. The story is just beginning. Part 2. Suspicion and Investigation. Damien sat alone in his office, the glow from his computer screen casting sharp shadows on his face, highlighting every angular line. 3 days had passed since Jonas's whispered warning, yet the words still echoed through his mind like a haunting refrain. There's a camera in your office, not from the company. He hadn't touched the oak bookshelf where Jonas claimed the device was hidden, not wanting to tip off whoever might be watching. Thorntech was his fortress, equipped with cutting-edge cybersecurity, surveillance in every corner, and a hand-picked team of elite engineers. The idea of a spy device in his private office wasn't just a threat, it was an insult. He opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as he checked the access logs of the building's security systems. No signs of a breach, no alerts, no irregularities in the internal data traffic. That could mean only one of two things. Either the person behind this was a tech genius, or they had help from inside. Damien leaned back, his eyes sweeping the room. The oak bookshelf stood silently in the corner, a mute witness. He wanted to tear it apart right then and there, to rip the secret from its hiding place. But his instincts told him to wait. If someone was watching, he needed to move like a predator, patient, deliberate. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. Elena's name lit up the screen. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the answer button. The image of her straightening his tie at the press conference, her radiant smile as she gifted him the old notebook, it all came flooding back. But Jonas's words sliced through those memories like a blade. He shook his head, silently scolding himself for letting doubt creep in. Elena couldn't be involved. She was the only one he'd ever let into his guarded world. He answered the call. "Damien, are you still at the office?" Elena's voice was soft, tinged with concern. "It's late. You should rest." Damien smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Just finishing up a few things. How are you?" "I'm home," she replied playfully. "Just made myself a cup of tea, but it doesn't taste the same without you here. Are you free tomorrow? I want to take you somewhere. Just the two of us." Warmth spread through his chest at her words, but so did a flicker of suspicion. Why call now? Did she know he was in the office? "Sounds nice," he said evenly, analyzing every word she said. "I'll check my schedule and text you later." Elena chuckled. "Don't work yourself to death, Damien. I need you alive and well for our engagement party." They said goodnight, and Damien set the phone down, his expression darkening. He stood and walked toward the bookshelf. Leaving the desk lamp off, he used the flashlight on his phone to scan the shelves. Technical manuals and business biographies sat neatly in place, not a speck of dust out of line. Slowly, he moved the light across the surface, searching for anything out of place. In the back corner, behind a thick book on cryptography, he found a tiny device, no bigger than a coin, seamlessly embedded into the shelf's inner edge. A camera. Jonas had been right. It was so discreet that even Thorntech's state-of-the-art security systems hadn't flagged it. Damien's pulse quickened, but he didn't touch the device. Instead, he returned to his desk, opened a drawer, and retrieved a signal scanner, a tool of his own design, built to detect covert recording tech. The scanner beeped, confirming an active transmission. It wasn't just recording, it was sending data out. Damien sat down, his chest tightening. Someone was watching him, tracking his movements, his decisions. Private meetings about government contracts, tech development plans, even intimate moments. All possibly recorded. He thought of the night he proposed to Elena, right here in this office, kneeling, heart pounding with joy. The idea that someone else had seen that sacred moment made his blood boil, but he forced himself to breathe. Anger wouldn't solve this. He needed facts. He needed proof. He launched a network analysis program and keyed in a master access code to trace data traffic through Thorntech's internal systems. If the camera was transmitting, the data had to pass through a company node or be redirected elsewhere. Within minutes, he located a strange encrypted stream of data originating from the 50th floor and routing to an unknown external server. Damien's eyes narrowed. Someone had bypassed his system, the one he had built to be unbreakable. He recorded the suspicious IP address, noting it for future tracing. But he wouldn't act on it just yet. If whoever installed the camera realized he'd found it, they'd shift tactics. He turned toward the window. The city lights blinked like fireflies in the night. Jonas came to mind again, the sharp-eyed gatekeeper with a mysterious past. The man had been a security engineer. That explained how he spotted the camera. But it didn't explain why he had chosen to tell Damien and no one else. "I don't trust anyone here, except you." Jonas's words echoed in his head. What did Jonas know that he didn't? And why had he risked getting involved? Damien pulled out his phone and typed a short message to Elena. "I'm free tomorrow. Take me wherever you want." He hit send, though he wasn't expecting a reply. In his mind, her smile now flickered alongside the image of the hidden camera. He hated himself for it, but the seed of doubt had been planted, a crack in the glass of their perfect world. Damien shut down his computer, locked his office, and stepped into the hallway. Somewhere in the shadows, he could still hear the soft rhythm of Jonas's broom sweeping across the floor like a ghostly metronome counting down the seconds to a truth that might not be welcome once uncovered. Damien sat in his penthouse apartment, the lights of the city spilling through the tall glass windows and casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. It was nearly 10 p.m., but his mind was a tangled knot. The tiny hidden camera behind the office bookshelf, the mysterious stream of encrypted data being sent to an unknown server, they were puzzle pieces that still didn't form a full picture. He'd spent the entire day analyzing Thorntech's security systems, but the deeper he dug, the more fragile his so-called impenetrable fortress seemed. And then there was Elena, the woman he loved, the one he had believed just days ago was the missing piece of his life. But Jonas's whispered warning had planted a seed of suspicion, and now that seed was growing, no matter how hard he tried to smother it. The doorbell rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Damien stood, straightened his shirt, and opened the door. Elena stood there in a beige wool coat, her brown hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes sparkling in the hallway light. "You said you wanted to go somewhere, just the two of us," she said with a soft smile, holding up a small paper bag. "I thought tonight might be perfect, and I brought dinner pumpkin soup, your favorite." Damien felt a squeeze in his chest. Pumpkin soup, the comfort dish his mother used to make when he was a boy. He told Elena about it once. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she remembered. She always remembered, always found a way to pull him out of the cold shell he wore so well. "You always surprise me," Damien said, keeping his voice steady, though his eyes studied her closely, scanning for any sign of deception. Elena stepped inside and placed the bag on the kitchen counter, pulling out 2 steaming bowls of soup. "You look tense," she said with gentle concern. "Work getting to you again? Or is it that government contract?" She tilted her head, eyes quietly probing. Damien felt a jolt of alertness. She was asking about work, something she often did, but tonight, the question felt off, too pointed. He decided to test her. "There's a new project," he said, taking a seat across from her and picking up a glass of wine to hide his unease. "Cutting-edge tech could change how we protect data, but it's still in testing, very sensitive stuff." He watched her carefully, gauging every reaction. Elena nodded, took a sip of water, her gaze never leaving his. "Sounds fascinating," she said, voice soft. "But you know I don't really understand tech. I just want you to be careful and not push yourself too hard." She smiled and reached out to gently touch his hand. "The engagement party's almost here, Damien. I need my groom alive and well." Her smile lit up the room, but Damien couldn't shake the thought. Was she trying to distract him? They ate in a calm, comfortable silence, but Damien's mind was a storm. Every word, every glance, every movement of Elena's was dissected. Was her question innocent or intentional? Was that touch of affection genuine or calculated? He hated that he was thinking this way. Elena was the only person who had ever broken through his walls. She knew all his quiet secrets, like how he loved to sit by the window when it rained, or how pumpkin soup reminded him of home. But if she was involved with a hidden camera, if she was the betrayer, then all those moments were part of an act. "Damien," Elena said suddenly, pulling him from his spiral. She stood by the window, gazing out at the city lights. "Do you ever think about slowing down? Stepping away from work, just for a little while? Living for yourself?" Her voice was soft, but there was a faraway note in it, like she was speaking more to herself than to him. Damien rose and joined her. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Elena turned to him, her eyes carrying a hint of sadness. "Sometimes I'm afraid you love Thorntech more than you love me, that it's your whole world, and I'm just a visitor in it." She gave a small laugh, trying to lighten the mood, but Damien felt something crack inside his chest. Her words were painfully sincere, but was that sincerity real? Or was she playing a deeper game? "You are my world," he said hoarsely. He took her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin. But even as he held her, The image of the hidden camera flashed through his mind again. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to pull her into his arms and let the doubts melt away. But logic wouldn't let him. "Why don't you get some rest?" he said, guiding her toward the sofa. "I'll clean up." Elena nodded and leaned in, kissing his cheek before walking away. When the bedroom door clicked shut, Damien stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the remaining bowl of soup. The pumpkin flavor lingered on his lips, but now it tasted bitter, tainted by suspicion. He returned to his laptop and launched the tracking software. The data stream from the hidden camera was still active, still transmitting. He hadn't cracked the encryption yet. He needed time. He needed evidence. But more than anything, he needed to know if the woman he loved was the one behind it all. Damien clenched his fists, his gaze dark and unflinching. He would find the truth, even if it destroyed him. Damien sat in the control room of Thorntech, a sealed chamber deep beneath the building, where he often tested new security technologies. The large monitor in front of him displayed endless lines of code, glowing blue against the tension etched on his face. It had been 3 days since he found the micro camera hidden behind the bookshelf in his office. 3 days since the seed of doubt about Elena had taken root, despite his efforts to destroy it. The conversation from last night, her pumpkin soup, the earnest look in her eyes as she asked if he'd ever thought about slowing down, still twisted in his chest like a knife. But reason had won. He needed the truth, and the camera was the key. Damien had copied the camera's data stream to a private server, disconnected from Thorntech's mainframe, to avoid detection. He didn't want whoever was behind the surveillance, whoever it was, to know that he was on to them. His analysis software, self-developed and classified, was now breaking through the encryption. Lines of code blinked and shifted, like secrets unraveling themselves. After nearly an hour, a message flashed on screen. "Decryption complete." Damien drew in a slow breath, his finger hovering over the keyboard. What he was about to see could change everything. He opened the data folder. Dozens of video files appeared, time-stamped over the last 6 months. His pulse quickened as he scrolled through them. The footage showed everything in his office, private meetings with his engineering team, confidential discussions about government contracts, even moments when he sat alone, staring out the window, lost in thought. Then he saw it, a video dated March 14th, the day he proposed to Elena. He clicked. The screen lit up with the moment he dropped to one knee, a ring in hand, Elena standing before him, eyes filled with tears of joy. She nodded yes, overwhelmed. It was the most intimate, personal moment of his life, and someone had watched it, had recorded it. Damien clenched his fists, a fury rising in his chest. Who dared violate his life like this? He continued scanning through the files until one stopped him cold. Timestamp, 2:37 a.m., 2 weeks ago. The office was dark. Only a faint hallway light slipped through the crack in the door. A figure entered, quiet as a shadow. Damien zoomed in, eyes narrowing. The person wore a hooded coat, but then the figure turned. Dim light caught their face, Elena. She moved swiftly and deliberately to the bookshelf. Her fingers brushed over the spines, stopping exactly where the camera was hidden. Then she removed a small decorative mirror nearby and inspected something behind it, a data relay device. Damien recognized it instantly. She replaced the mirror, scanned the room, and slipped away. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. Damien felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. He rewound the footage, watched it again and again, praying he was wrong, but it was her. It was Elena. Her eyes in the footage were cold, calculating, nothing like the warm, smiling woman from the night before. Was this the real Elena? The woman who adjusted his tie so carefully, who made pumpkin soup because she knew it reminded him of his mother? Had all of it been a performance? He opened another file, then another, as if desperate to find something, anything that would prove her innocent. But each new video only deepened the crack in his heart. One showed her sneaking into his office late at night to check his computer. Another captured her photographing documents from his desk. Each clip was a blade to the chest. Damien leaned back, covering his face with his hand, trying to breathe. Elena is a spy. There was no other explanation. But why? What did she want from me, he wondered. Money? He would have given her everything. Power? She'd never seemed ambitious, or maybe her love had never been real. He thought of her voice from the night before, soft, distant, when she'd asked if he'd ever thought about stepping away from work. Was that guilt? A warning? A veiled confession? One final video caught his eye. He clicked it, expecting more betrayal, but this time the footage stunned him. Elena stood alone in his office. She wasn't stealing files. She wasn't touching anything. She was simply standing there, looking out the window, arms wrapped around herself. City lights painted her face with silver, and Damien saw that she was crying. Not tears of joy like the night of the proposal, these were silent, aching tears. She whispered something, but the camera had no audio. Damien zoomed in on her face, reading her lips. "I'm sorry," he guessed, and suddenly his chest tightened with something worse than anger, confusion. Who was she apologizing to? Him? Herself? Damien shut the screen. He couldn't watch anymore. He stood walking to the window, staring out at the sleeping city. The truth was right in front of him, but it didn't bring closure. It brought emptiness. Elena, the woman he loved, the woman he was going to marry, was a traitor. But that moment, the pain on her face, left a haunting question behind. Was there more to the story? He needed proof. He needed a plan. Damien returned to his desk, reopened his laptop, and began drafting a fake email, a decoy detailing the breakthrough project he had mentioned to Elena the night before. If she really was a spy, she'd act on it, and he'd catch her. One way or another, he would uncover the truth, even if it destroyed him. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. Part 3, Facing the Truth. Damien stood at the window of his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like lost stars. It had been 4 days since he watched the footage from the hidden camera in his office images that refused to fade. Elena, creeping in during the night, inspecting a data relay, photographing documents. But the one that haunted him most was her standing alone in the dark, whispering, "I'm sorry," to the window. Sorry for what? For betraying him? Or something deeper, something he hadn't yet uncovered? He gripped the coffee mug in his hand. The warmth from the porcelain did nothing to ease the cold tightening in his chest. Setting the mug down, he sank into the chair at his desk, his gaze drifting to the photo frame beside his monitor, an image of him and Elena on a weekend trip to the coast. She wore a white sweater, hair tossed by the wind, laughing as he lifted her into his arms. "Damien, put me down!" she had shouted, laughing, her voice echoing across the sand. He'd once thought it was the happiest moment of his life. Now he stared at the photo and wondered, had it all been an act? He closed his eyes and let the memories flood in, not to indulge in nostalgia, but to search for the signs he'd missed. He hated himself for being blind, for letting love cloud his judgment. The first time a flicker of doubt crossed his mind was 6 months ago, when Elena casually asked about the status of Project Aurora, a classified encryption initiative known to only a handful within Thorntech. "You've been so tense lately," she had said, genuinely, or so he thought. "Is that project really that important? You mentioned it in your sleep." He'd laughed it off, assuming it was harmless curiosity. But 2 weeks later, a competing firm released a remarkably similar product. Thorntech lost a critical deal. Damien had chalked it up to coincidence. Now he wasn't so sure. Another memory emerged sharper this time. His birthday. They had dinner at his favorite Italian place. Elena had reserved a private table, ordered his favorite carbonara, and even requested the jazz song he once mentioned reminded him of childhood. Every detail had been perfect. But during dinner she asked, "Has Thorntech ever been hacked? I mean, what if someone tried to steal data?" He had smiled proudly and told her his system was unbreakable. She nodded, smiled too, but her eyes had shifted just for a second, like she was hiding something. He hadn't noticed then, but now the memory cut like glass. He opened his eyes and looked down at the leather notebook Elena had given him at the press conference. He flipped through its pages again, hoping for a clue, a hidden message. But it was just old scribbles from some previous owner. Still, he remembered how she'd given it to him, her eyes shining. "It reminded me of you, simple but deep," she had said. How can someone fake sincerity like that? Or was it even fake at all? Damien rubbed his temples. His mind felt like it was fracturing under the weight of conflicting truths. Every memory of Elena carried dual meanings now: love wrapped in suspicion, tenderness laced with pain. Another scene surfaced, this one from a quiet Sunday morning. She had woken early to make breakfast toast and black coffee, just the way he liked. When he entered the kitchen, she was humming a song, the sunlight catching strands of her hair, making them glow. "Sleep well, Mr. CEO," she teased, setting the plate in front of him. But when he casually asked what she'd done the night before, she hesitated a single beat before replying, "Oh, just went for a walk. Needed some air." At the time, it had meant nothing. But now he remembered that same night, a confidential Thorntech email had been leaked. No one could trace how, but it had sparked a minor crisis. Had she gone out to meet someone? Had she sold his secrets? Damien got up and paced the room. He hated these thoughts, hated the man he was becoming, paranoid, cold, suspicious of the woman he once trusted more than anyone. But the footage didn't lie. Elena had been in his office, had accessed the relay, had photographed private documents. Yet the image of her crying alone, whispering an apology, it haunted him. Was she playing a dangerous game? Or had she been forced into it? He wanted to believe the second, but the mind that had built Thorntech from nothing, that trusted in logic over feeling, wouldn't allow forgiveness without proof. He returned to his desk and opened his laptop, pulling up the fake email he'd sent that morning. In it, he'd informed his core engineering team that Aurora had reached a major breakthrough, complete with fabricated technical specs data that would be enticing to any rival. If Elena was feeding information to someone, she would pass this along. If the data leaked, he'd have final proof. And then he could confront her. No more suspicion, no more doubt, just the truth. He looked out the window again, jaw tight. He didn't want to believe their love was a lie, but this time he wouldn't let his heart decide. Not again. Damien sat alone in his office, the glow from the computer screen casting stark shadows across his tense features. It had been 5 days since he watched the incriminating video Elena sneaking into his office, her sharp eyes focused as she examined a data relay, snapped photos of confidential documents, and then later, standing in the dark whispering, "I'm sorry." Every memory of her pumpkin soup, lazy weekend breakfast, her radiant smile on his birthday now collided with suspicion, like a portrait shredded by betrayal. He wanted to believe she'd been forced into it, that her love had been real, but the camera didn't lie. Damien knew he needed to act. He needed a final answer, and so he had laid a trap. 3 days earlier, he had sent a fabricated email to Thorntech's engineering team announcing a breakthrough in Project Aurora, a supposedly revolutionary encryption algorithm that could increase processing speed tenfold. No such algorithm existed, but it was exactly the kind of bait that a rival organization would leap at. Damien had embedded a silent monitoring script into the network, watching for any sign of a leak. If Elena was the mole, she'd take the bait, and Damien would know. Now he opened his laptop and scanned the alert logs. No direct emails had been sent from the team, but this morning, an unusual data stream had triggered a flag sent from an unidentified device within Thorntech, routed to an offshore server hidden behind layers of encryption in Eastern Europe. Damien's jaw tightened. This was it. The false Aurora data had been transmitted, and Elena had been in the building. He didn't need more evidence to know the information had leaked, but he did need confirmation that she was behind it. He rose from his chair and stepped out onto the balcony. The night wind bit at his skin, but he felt no cold, only the storm boiling inside him. He thought about their conversation the night before. Elena had casually brought up Aurora. "You've been tense about that project," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Is it really that important?" Damien had played it vague, but she looked away just for a second like she was calculating. He hated himself for doubting her, but now this leak was the final dagger. Back inside, he pulled up a deeper analysis tool. The device that had transmitted the data had used Thorntech's internal Wi-Fi. Its timestamp matched exactly with Elena's visit to his office that morning. She had brought him coffee, smiled like she always did, and curled up on the sofa while he worked. "I just wanted to be near you," she had said. Sweet, familiar. But now he realized she had stayed longer than usual, had scrolled her phone in silence. Had she sent the data right under his nose? Damien clenched his fists. A rage flared in his chest, but beneath it, heartbreak throbbed like an open wound. He wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but emotion would destroy everything. He needed a plan, a moment where there would be no more room to deny. The engagement party, the one everyone was expecting, would be his stage. He would give her one final chance to come clean. But if she didn't, he would expose everything in front of the world. He picked up his phone, scrolling through the gallery until he found the photo of Elena on the beach, her sunlit smile, her head leaning against his shoulder. He remembered the way she whispered that she only wanted him to be happy. How can someone fake love that well? Or was it never fake at all? He shook the thought away. The evidence was undeniable. Elena was a spy. She had used his love, his trust, to steal what he had built from nothing. And yet, the image of her crying in that video alone, broken, whispering, "I'm sorry," wouldn't leave him. Damien closed his laptop and walked to the liquor cabinet. He poured himself a glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. He just stared at the amber liquid, as if the truth might surface there. He thought about Jonas, the janitor, who started all this with a whisper. Jonas had told him he trusted no one in the company. No one but Damien. Why? How did Jonas know about the camera? What else did he know about Elena? Damien set the glass down, untouched. He wouldn't let emotions rule him. Not tonight. The engagement party would go ahead as planned. But it wouldn't be a celebration. It would be the reckoning. Damien looked out over the city, his empire. He had built Thorntech from nothing, and he wouldn't let anyone, not even the woman he loved, tear it down. But deep down, beneath the fury and the strategy, he knew, whatever truth he uncovered next, it would leave a scar that would never fully heal. Damien stood in the basement parking lot of Thorntech headquarters, the shadows around him broken only by flickering fluorescent lights. It was close to midnight, and the chill in the underground air made him shiver, but not from the cold. Just hours ago, he had confirmed the fake data about Project Aurora had been leaked. Every trail pointed to Elena, the woman he loved, the woman he was going to marry. The footage of her sneaking into his office, checking the relay device, and crying alone in the dark still haunted him. The evidence was undeniable. She was a spy. He had already planned to expose her at the engagement party, but deep down, his heart still clung to a desperate hope, a reason, an explanation that could redeem what they once had. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the lot. Damien turned, and out of the shadows emerged the thin frame of Jonas, the longtime gatekeeper. His white hair glinted under the dim lights, and his deep brown eyes, always sharp, now held a cautious look. Jonas hadn't shown himself since the night he whispered the first warning about the hidden camera. Damien had almost assumed he was avoiding him, but now here he was, broom in hand, gaze calculating. "You're here late," Jonas said, his rough voice breaking the silence. "Thought you'd be busy with the engagement party." Damien frowned, unsure if there was hidden meaning in Jonas's words. "Needed some air," he replied coolly, though his eyes stayed locked on Jonas. The old man never spoke without purpose, and showing up now at this hour couldn't be coincidence. Jonas stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. He glanced around the parking lot, as if making sure no one else was around. "I saw your girl," he said, lowering his voice. "Miss Voss, here, in this parking lot, about a month ago. She was meeting a man, late at night." Damien's heart slammed in his chest like a sudden blow. "A man?" he asked, his voice tight. Jonas nodded slowly, eyes fixed on him. "Didn't look romantic. She looked scared, like she was being forced. The guy was tall, wore a black suit, spoke coldly. I couldn't hear much, but she handed him something. Could have been a flash drive." Damien clenched his fist, trying to stay calm. Jonas's words poured gasoline on the fire inside him. Elena, meeting a strange man? Handing over a USB? It all fit the timeline, fit the leaks, fit the footage. She was the mole, working for someone on the outside. But something Jonas said made him pause. She looked scared. He remembered the video. Elena alone whispering, "I'm sorry," through tears. Was she being coerced? Could that pain have been real? "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Damien asked, his voice low and tight, though inside he was a storm. Jonas shrugged, a flicker of sorrow in his eyes. "I used to be a security engineer. You know that. I've seen what happens when people trust the wrong ones. I didn't want to assume. But when I saw her, she didn't look like a traitor. She looked like someone trapped." He paused, carefully choosing his words. "I don't know who she is, Damien, but I know you deserve to know the truth." Damien turned away, staring into the darkened lot. Jonas's words hit hard, another wound, another layer of confusion. If Elena had been forced into this, why hadn't she told him? He had given her everything: his heart, his trust, his future. And if she was truly a traitor, why the tears? Why the trembling? He thought back to her smile on the beach, to the way her eyes lit up when she gave him that old leather notebook. Were those moments real, or were they just calculated moves in a much bigger game? "I appreciate it, Jonas," Damien said at last, voice heavy but steady. He didn't meet the old man's eyes. Jonas gave a slow nod and turned away, gripping his broom once more. "Be careful, Mr. Damien," he said over his shoulder. "Truth hurts worse than lies sometimes." His footsteps faded, the sound of the broom dragging through the silence like a slow heartbeat. Damien climbed into his car, gripping the wheel, unmoving. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo of Elena on the beach, her golden smile, her head resting on his shoulder. Now that smile only brought him pain. He thought of the engagement party, the plan he'd crafted with ruthless precision, the damning video clips, the leaked data, the fake Aurora project, all ready to present, all aimed at destroying the illusion. But now, Jonas's words repeated in his head. She looked scared. Was he rushing to judgment? If Elena had been threatened, if she'd been trying to protect him or herself, could he live with what he was about to do? Damien's hands tightened around the steering wheel, his eyes dark as stone. He couldn't let emotion decide. She had betrayed him, and he would face her. But in his heart, he knew, no matter what truth came to light, it would leave a scar that would never fade. Part 4. The final confrontation. The engagement party was held in the grand ballroom of the Grand Lumiere Hotel, where crystal chandeliers spilled golden light over silk tablecloths and glittering wine glasses. Guests from tech elites to reporters and Thorntech partners mingled in elegant attire, buzzing with praise for the picture-perfect couple, Damien Thorne and Elena Voss. The atmosphere sparkled with luxury and charm, but to Damien, the ballroom was no celebration. It was a stage, a carefully constructed battleground. Tonight, he would expose the truth no matter how much it shattered him. Damien stood in the center of the room, dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, his posture immaculate, his gaze cold and composed. At his side stood Elena, radiant in a white silk gown, her brown hair cascading over her shoulders, her smile dazzling enough to command the attention of the entire room. She held his hand tightly, fingers laced with his as if nothing were wrong. "You okay?" she whispered, tilting her head, concern soft in her voice. Damien nodded faintly, but inside, every touch from her felt like a blade. He couldn't stop the images playing on loop in his mind. Elena sneaking into his office, inspecting the surveillance relay, her panicked meeting with a mysterious man in the parking garage, and most of all, the image of her crying alone, whispering, "I'm sorry." He had hoped she would confess. He had hoped there was still a version of their love worth saving, but she continued to play her role flawlessly. And that hurt more than any betrayal. The event unfolded seamlessly, cheers, applause, heartfelt toasts from friends and colleagues. Laughter echoed off the chandeliered ceilings. Then Damien stepped up to the stage, microphone in hand. His eyes swept over the crowd. "Thank you all for being here to share in our joy," he began, voice steady, smooth. "Tonight isn't just a celebration of love. It's also a tribute to truth." Polite smiles rippled through the audience. Some thought he was about to launch into a heartfelt speech. Elena stood beside him, still beaming. But Damien noticed the subtle shift in her grip, her fingers tightened around his. She could feel it. Something was off. He gave a slight signal to the AV team. Behind him, the grand screen flickered to life. The ballroom fell silent. The first image appeared. Elena, cloaked in darkness, inside Damien's office. She was removing a small mirror, revealing a hidden device, and inspecting it with the precision of someone who knew exactly what to look for. A gasp cut through the quiet. Whispered confusion rippled across the guests. Damien didn't turn. He didn't have to. He felt Elena stiffen beside him. The second clip rolled. Elena again this time, taking photographs of documents on Damien's desk. Her expression was cold, clinical, not a trace of the warm, loving partner everyone thought they knew. And finally, footage from a security camera in the Thorntech parking garage. Elena handing a USB to a tall man in a black suit. Her eyes darted nervously, her body trembling. The image was grainy, but her fear was unmistakable. The room froze. Gasps. Stifled murmurs. Some guests covered their mouths. Others simply stared. Damien slowly turned to face her. His voice was quiet but unwavering. "Elena," he said, "do you have anything to say?" She stood motionless. Her face had gone pale, lips parted but speechless. The perfect smile was gone. In its place, panic. She tried to speak, but no words came. Damien's chest ached. He had braced himself for this confrontation, but he had never prepared for this kind of silence. "I trusted you," he said, voice cracking, raw. "I gave you everything, my trust, my love, my future, and you chose betrayal." He stopped, his eyes boring into hers, still searching desperately for something. A sign, a reason, a single shred of truth he could still hold on to. But Elena lowered her gaze and tears slid silently down her cheeks. The whispers in the room grew louder. Cameras flashed. The story was already being written. The fall of the perfect couple. The spy who stole the CEO's heart and secrets. Damien looked away. He couldn't bear to see her face anymore. He had prepared for this moment, but nothing had prepared him for the pain now splitting his chest open from the inside. The truth had been revealed, but it had come at a cost, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ballroom remained frozen in suffocating silence. The only sounds were the soft murmurs of the stunned guests and the intermittent flashes of cameras trying to capture the ruin of what once appeared to be a perfect love story. Elena stood in the center of it all, her wide eyes glazed, her skin pale as paper. Tears streamed silently down her face, streaking her makeup like watercolors bleeding down a canvas. The screen behind her continued to loop the video, her passing the USB to the man in black, her expression as terrified as a cornered animal. Damien stood a few steps away, his shoulders squared, but his hands clenched tightly, the only sign of how hard he was holding himself together. He had waited, wanted Elena to deny it, to fight, to explain. But she had just stood there, silent, still, shattered. And then finally she raised her head. Her eyes met his. "Damien," she said, her voice no louder than a breath, trembling. I won't deny it." Gasps rippled through the room, but Elena didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice a little stronger, though still shaking. "At first it was just a mission. That's all it was supposed to be." She swallowed, her voice cracking. "But I fell in love with you, and I hated myself every single day because of it." Her words hit Damien like a fist to the chest. She took another breath, fighting against the sobs. "They forced me. My family owed money to a group. Debt my father left behind after he died. They threatened my mother, my sister. I didn't have a choice." She paused, her voice breaking. "I tried to stop. When I realized what you meant to me, I tried to walk away. But they wouldn't let me. Every time I stepped into your office, every time I copied something, I felt like I was killing a part of myself." Damien's mind reeled. The image of her crying in his office flashed before him. Jonas's words echoed in his head. She looked scared, like someone being forced. What Elena said matched what he had seen, but it didn't make the pain any easier. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw, cracking under the weight of it all. "I could have protected you, Elena, protected your family. Why did you choose betrayal instead?" She shook her head, sobbing now. I wanted to. I swear I did. But they knew everything about you, about Thorntech. They said if I ever spoke up, they'd destroy you before you could even react. I thought doing what they asked was the only way to keep you safe. She gave a bitter, broken laugh through her tears. But I was wrong. I hurt you. I betrayed you. And I'll never forgive myself for that. The guests said nothing. Some wiped away tears. Others simply stared, shaken. The room no longer held the excitement of an engagement party. It was a funeral for a love too fragile to survive. Damien didn't move. He stood still as a statue, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Inside him, two versions of himself waged war. The man who wanted to believe her, the man who wanted to wrap her in his arms and undo everything, and the man who had built Thorntech from nothing, who knew what it meant to be betrayed, who understood that trust once broken rarely healed. You had a choice, Damien said quietly, icily. You chose them over me. He turned away, heartbreaking all over again, and gave a small nod to security. Take her out. Elena didn't resist when the guard stepped forward. She didn't plead. She only looked at Damien one last time, her expression soaked in grief. I love you, she whispered, and then she was gone. Damien didn't turn to watch her leave, but her words lodged in his heart like a blade twisted and left behind. The guests slowly began to disperse. Conversations were hushed. The party was over. All that remained was the wreckage. Damien stood alone on the stage, staring up at the paused frame on the screen. Elena, crying alone in his office, whispering an apology to no one but herself. He had won. He had exposed the truth. So why did it feel like he had lost everything? The Grand Lumiere ballroom was now empty, save for the half-drunk glasses of wine scattered across the tables and the dim amber glow from the crystal chandeliers. The music had stopped. The guests had gone, carrying with them whispers of the scandal that had just unfolded. Damien Thorne stood alone on the stage, his eyes blank, staring at the frozen image on the large screen behind him, Elena's tearful face, her lips caught mid-sentence, whispering, I love you, as the security team led her away. He had won. The truth was out. Elena had admitted she was a spy, but this victory felt hollow, like it had been carved out of his chest. He stepped down from the stage, his feet heavy as lead. He passed the lavishly set tables, adorned with the white roses Elena had personally chosen. Every detail of the night, her adjusting his tie, the pumpkin soup she made, her laughter on the beach flashed through his mind in sharp, aching clarity. But now those memories were tainted. Her confession rang in his ears. At first it was a mission, but I fell in love with you, and I hated myself for it every day. He wanted to believe it, wanted to believe she had been forced, that her love was real. But the betrayal, the footage, the stolen documents, the USB, those were wounds he couldn't ignore. Damien left the hotel and stepped into the cold shadows of the parking garage. The night air bit at his skin, but he didn't feel it. He just needed to get away from that ballroom, from the ghosts of what had been. As he reached for his car door, a familiar voice spoke from the shadows. You all right, Damien? He turned to see Jonas, the gatekeeper, who had started it all with a single whisper emerging from the dark, broom in hand, his deep brown eyes watching Damien with quiet concern. I didn't expect to see you, Damien muttered. Jonas offered a slight shrug, stepping closer. I figured you might be down here. I've been through my share of messes, but this, he glanced toward the hotel above. This one's hard. Damien's voice was low, laced with bitter exhaustion. You knew, didn't you? You knew she was a spy. Jonas's gaze softened with something almost like pity. I didn't know, Damien. I saw what I saw her meeting a man in the garage, scared out of her mind. I've worked in security long enough to know when someone's being coerced, but I also knew you deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. He paused, placing the broom against the wall. I lost someone once, trusted the wrong person. It nearly broke me. I didn't want you to go through it blind. Damien stared into the darkness, his voice barely above a whisper. She said she was forced, said she loved me. But how can I believe her after everything? Jonas stepped beside him, placed a steady hand on his shoulder. It was the first time Damien had ever felt the man's touch solid, grounded. Sometimes the truth is ugly, Jonas said, but your heart knows what's real. That girl, she didn't look at you like a liar, not even when she thought no one was watching. But now it's your call, Damien. You either forgive her or you let her go. Jonas let his hand fall, his gaze deep and unwavering. Whatever you choose, don't let it destroy you. With that, he turned and walked away, the rhythmic sound of the broom brushing across concrete fading into the silence. Damien sat in his car but didn't start it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the engagement ring, the one he had once slipped onto Elena's finger. The diamond glinted faintly in the dim garage light. He remembered her laughing and crying as he proposed, saying she'd never been so happy. How could that be a lie? But then he remembered the footage, the betrayal, her confession. His grip on the ring tightened until it dug into his palm. Elena had been arrested for corporate espionage shortly after the party, released on bail thanks to her lawyer. The headlines came quickly: Spy Bride of Silicon Valley. The woman who brought down the perfect couple. Damien hadn't read a single article. He didn't want to see her name, didn't want to remember her smile. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, not the traitor, but the woman who whispered, "I love you," through tears. He had cast her out, banished her from his life. So why did it still feel like he was the one left behind? Damien started the car and drove into the night. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving away from the pain, the questions, the love that still clung to his ribs like smoke. But deep down, beneath the rage and sorrow, one truth remained. Whether Elena was spy or victim, traitor or someone trying to survive, she had left behind a scar no time would ever truly erase. You're watching Soul Stories exclusive to our channel. If you're still with us, drop a comment. We read and cherish them all. Subscribe to support more heartfelt, original stories. Thanks for being part of the Soul Stories family. Part 5, the finale and redemption. 4 months had passed since the engagement party at the Grand Lumiere Hotel, but the pain still felt like a thorn lodged deep in Damien Thorne's heart. He sat in his office at Thorntech headquarters, the glow from the computer screen casting shadows across his weary face. The glass tower, once his pride and joy, now served only as a painful reminder of Elena videos of her secretly checking data collection devices, footage of her handing over a USB to a strange man in the parking garage, and the moment she wept silently, whispering, "I'm sorry." The media had stopped talking about her after she was released on bail for data breach charges, but Damien couldn't erase her from his mind. Every corner of the office, every street, carried traces of her. The bright smile as she fixed his tie, the pumpkin soup she made, the joyful gleam in her eyes when he slipped the engagement ring on her finger. Damien lived like a shadow of himself. He ran Thorntech, signed contracts, met with partners, but it all felt hollow. His anger at Elena had faded, replaced by an emptiness he couldn't fill. He missed the smallest moments, the way she hummed in the kitchen, the sunlight on her hair, the way she once said she only wanted him to be happy. Her confession at the party, "It started as a mission, but I truly fell in love with you, and I hate myself for it every single day," still echoed in his head. He wanted to believe she had been forced, that her love was real, but the wound from her betrayal made him hesitate. One late evening, just as Damien was about to leave the office, Jonas appeared at the door. The silver-haired doorman, with those deep brown eyes, had become an integral part of this story, from the whispered warning about the camera to the alert about Elena. "You're still working late," Jonas said, his voice rough but warm. "So are you, Jonas," Damien replied with a faint smile. Jonas pulled a black USB drive from his coat pocket and handed it to him. "Miss Voss gave me this at the engagement party," he said. "Right before she was taken away, she shoved it into my hand and told me to give it to you when the time was right. She said it would give you answers." Damien took the USB, his hand slightly trembling. He looked at Jonas, eyes filled with suspicion. "Why did you wait until now?" he asked. Jonas shrugged, his eyes tinged with sadness. "I used to be a security engineer. You know that. I've seen people destroyed because they trusted the wrong truth. That girl looked like she was trying to atone when she gave me this. I wanted to make sure you were ready." He paused, then added, "She looked at you like you were her whole world, even as she was being taken away." "Watch it, Damien," Maybe it'll help you." Damien nodded silently. Jonas turned and disappeared down the hallway, the sound of his broom echoing softly behind him. Damien went back into his office and sat down. The USB sat on the desk like a relic from another life. He didn't plug it in right away. He just stared at it, afraid it would bring back all the pain he'd worked so hard to bury. Finally, he opened his laptop and inserted the drive. A video file and a folder of documents appeared on the screen. He clicked on the video first. Elena's face appeared, her expression weary but determined, sitting in a dimly lit room. "Damien," she said, her voice trembling, "if you're watching this, you probably already know the truth about me. I knew it was only a matter of time before you found out I was a spy, or before the organization discovered I stopped working for them. My heart has been torn between the safety of my mother and sister and my love for you. I realized I couldn't go on, but I couldn't walk away either. I started feeding them false information to sabotage their plans to destroy Thorntech. This USB contains the evidence. I don't know how much longer I'll be around, but I wanted you to be safe. I love you, and I'm sorry." Damien felt his heart tighten. He remembered Elena's terrified expression in the office footage, Jonas's words about her looking like someone fighting herself. Was this video real or just one last desperate attempt to win him back? For the first time in 4 months, he felt a sliver of hope fragile, but enough to make him want to dig deeper. Damien sat in Thorntech's control room, the blue light from the computer screens casting sharp shadows across his tense features. The USB drive Elena had slipped into Jonas's hand just before being escorted out of the engagement party lay on the desk, a challenge from the past. Her video-trembling voice, determined eyes still echoed in his mind. "I knew it was only a matter of time before you found out. I fed them false information to stop the plan to sabotage Thorntech." If that was true, Elena had risked everything to save him. But Damien needed proof. He'd been hurt once. He couldn't let his heart lead him again. He opened the folder on the USB drive and found encrypted documents detailing the criminal organization's plan. A cyber attack aimed at crippling Thorntech's encryption systems, leaking client data, and causing billions in damages. But the documents were filled with incorrect information, misleading algorithms, non-existent system structures, altered attack timelines. Elena had deliberately fed them false data, causing the plan to fail. One note file from her explained, "I know they'll find out about me. I'm making this video and planting false intel because I can't go on anymore. I've included the identities of some of the organization's members here, hoping the authorities can take them down. I don't know how much time I have left, but I want you to be safe." Damien dug into Thorntech's network logs and discovered a cyber attack attempt that had been blocked 4 months ago, thwarted by the false information Elena had given. He found an email from the National Cybersecurity Agency, addressed to Thorntech's technical team, thanking an anonymous source for providing intel that prevented the attack and helped dismantle a criminal organization in Eastern Europe. The email mentioned that identities of several members had been obtained from a USB drive, leading to multiple arrests. The timestamp of the email, 2 days after the engagement party, matched exactly when Elena had handed the USB to Jonas. Damien called Jonas in. The gatekeeper entered, his gaze sharp and steady. "What did you find?" Jonas asked. Damien showed him Elena's video. "She gave this to you at the party, didn't she?" Jonas nodded. "Miss Voss slipped it into my hand when security came for her. She said, 'Give it to Damien. He'll understand.'" The look in her eyes, it wasn't that of a traitor. Jonas paused. "I used to be a security engineer. I know when someone's trying to make amends. She did this for you." Damien leaned back, feeling the world tilt beneath him. Elena hadn't just saved Thorntech, she had helped take down the very organization that forced her into betrayal. She knew her cover as a spy would be blown, but instead of fleeing, she sabotaged their plan from the inside. He thought back to her eyes at the party, her whispered words, "I love you." Her integrity had come late, but it had been real. A sharp pang of regret twisted in his chest. He had cast her out without giving her a chance. He looked at Jonas, voice raspy. "Where is she now?" Jonas shrugged. "I heard she left the city, working somewhere out in the countryside. I don't know exactly." Damien nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. He had to find her to understand. to thank her, and maybe to fix what had been broken. Damien drove along winding roads leading to a small village nestled among green fields. The countryside sky was clear, but his heart felt heavy. After watching the video and going through the USB Elena had left, where she revealed she had fed false information to sabotage the organization's plan and protect Thorntech, he couldn't stay in the city any longer. He had learned Elena was now working as a volunteer teacher at a local school, living quietly to atone for her past. He hadn't come just for love, but to thank her for saving Thorntech and dismantling a threat no one else had seen coming. The school appeared a low building shaded by trees, with a playground in front. Damien parked, his eyes scanning the yard until they found Elena. She wore a simple blouse, her hair tied back, gently guiding children as they painted. She looked thinner, her face carrying quiet sorrow, but her smile remained gentle. When she looked up and saw him, the smile faded, replaced by confusion. She stepped back slightly, clutching a notebook to her chest like she feared he had come to accuse her. "Damien," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why are you here?" Damien walked closer, his eyes filled with a storm of emotions. "Jonas gave me the USB," he said. "I know you saved Thorntech. I know the organization was taken down because of you." Elena lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I never expected you to come, but I've dreamed of this moment every night I cried alone." She looked up, pain in her eyes. "I don't deserve you, Damien. I destroyed everything." Damien felt his chest tighten. Looking at her fragile, full of remorse, he didn't see a traitor. He saw the woman he still loved. "You saved me," he said, voice raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena shook her head. "I was afraid they'd hurt you. I thought doing it alone was the only way." He stepped closer, never taking his eyes off her. "You were wrong, Elena, but so was I for not giving you a chance." They stood there in the schoolyard, surrounded by wind and children's laughter, as Damien battled his pain and love. But in Elena's eyes, he saw something that stopped him from walking away. Damien and Elena sat on a wooden bench by the schoolyard, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees, casting dappled light on their faces. Neither of them spoke for several minutes, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. Damien looked at Elena, noticing a faint scar on her hand, the sadness in her eyes. He thought of the video she had left, her words about not knowing how much longer she had. She had prepared for exposure, but chose to save Thorntech and help take down a criminal organization. "I lost my trust in you," Damien said, voice sincere, "but I never stopped believing in your eyes. You hurt me, Elena, but you also saved me." She lowered her head, tears falling. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she whispered. "I just want you to know I loved you." Damien reached for her hand, feeling the warmth he once knew. "If we still love each other," he said, voice rough, "then there's still a road forward." Elena looked up, her eyes filled with cautious hope. They embraced, their tears mingling, as if time itself could begin to heal what had been broken. With the organization dismantled, there were no more threats, only love, waiting to be rebuilt. They stood hand in hand, walking beneath the golden sunset. The silence between them was no longer heavy, but a promise that they would move forward, even if the road wasn't easy. Final line: forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it opens the path for love to return.